Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Jinnah Institute, I would like to welcome you all to this talk by Mr. Shankar Aiyar. The Jinnah Institute, in collaboration with Australia-India Institute, have organized a series of lectures. 3 Indian speakers coming to Pakistan and 3 Pakistani speakers going to India to promote better understanding of each other's issues and problems. And Mr. Shankar Aiyar is here for the second of that series of 3 lectures. Mr. Aiyar is not unknown in Pakistan. In fact, I think he's better known in Pakistan than many of us are. His stint as Consul General in Karachi, even though it was so long ago, was so popular and good, and even today he has so many friends there that, as he normally puts it, he has more friends in Pakistan than enemies in India, and that's saying a lot. Mr. Shankar Aiyar has had a very distinguished career. He has, apart from his diplomatic career, which he abandoned right in the prime of his career and decided to go into politics, and then he was member of Lok Sabha, thrice elected to Lok Sabha, and currently he is member of Rajya Sabha, elected to a 6-year term. He has been cabinet minister, minister for Panchayat Raj, minister for petroleum, Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs. He is also a distinguished author, having written, I think, 7 books or so, and probably a few more coming in the future. And above everything else, he is a great advocate of better understanding and better relations between India and Pakistan. And in fact, his efforts throughout his career, both diplomatic and political, have been to promote better relations between India and Pakistan. And he has been uninterrupted and uninterruptible, if I may say, as far as that pursuit of that objective is concerned. And that is why the topic that he has chosen for today's talk is also about the uninterruptible and uninterruptible dialogue between India and Pakistan. Pakistan-India relations have seen many highs and lows, more lows than highs. And we have been several times, situations have come where we thought we are there, and then suddenly things start slipping slipping from our hands. When I was in Delhi in 2005, 2006, I felt that we are almost there and we are going to bring the whole thing to a closure. I thought Prime Minister Manmohan Singh would be visiting Pakistan, we would have all those issues that had been bedeviling the relationship behind us. A lot of progress was being made on the framework for an agreement on the Kashmir issue. And then suddenly events somehow prevented us to bringing that to a closure. And then Mumbai happened, and there was a hiatus in the dialogue process. And now that it has resumed, it has brought new hope for a settlement, and I think the MFN status that Pakistan has agreed to now would probably give this whole thing a great impetus. I think what is needed is somehow, apart from trying to settle the nitty-gritty of the whole thing, but also some leap of faith, some leap forward, something that we just decide to do, that we should take a bigger step rather than trying to manage problems and trying to resolve a little bit here and a little bit there. And I think in this connection, the most important would be just allow the civil societies to meet each other and go across the border, make the visa situation easy for both people of both countries, so that they can meet, and that will remove a lot of misperceptions and misunderstandings. But let me not give you a lecture about how to go about India-Pakistan relations. I think Mr. Aiyar is here for that. And I can very safely say that you wouldn't find a better speaker than him as far as this subject is concerned. So, without further ado, may I request Mr. Shankar Aiyar to please come and address.
Assalamu alaikum, my good friend Aziz, my good friend Ijaz, Rania and others connected with the Jinnah Institute, and friends. I'd like to begin by first thanking the Jinnah Institute and the Pugwash movement for having provided me with this golden opportunity. An opportunity I think I've been waiting for the better part of 3 decades. I've been able to avail of these opportunities in Karachi, which I'm much more familiar with than I am with Islamabad and Lahore. But to be here in the capital of Pakistan and have the opportunity to share, I regret at some length my views with you, is certainly an opportunity which I would wish to seize with both hands. So my grateful thanks also to Sherry Rahman, who before she became an excellency in Washington, had been involved with selecting me as one of the 3 Indians who will be coming across here. I think Shashi Tharoor has already been, and Najib Jung will be coming in a couple of weeks from now. And we've had Pakistani interlocutors come to India, including my friend Javed Jabbar, whom I've just met accidentally in the lobby of the Marriott Hotel. Friends, with just a few days left for partition and independence, Mahatma Gandhi made the suggestion, I think it was at the end of July 1947, that India and Pakistan should have a common army that would protect both of them from outside aggression. For otherwise, he said, there was the danger that the 2 armed forces would only be ranged against each other. Opposing this suggestion, Mazhar Ali Khan, the famed left-wing editor of the Pakistan Times, argued in an editorial published on the 10th of August 1947. I asked you to note that date. There were 4 days to go for Pakistan and 5 for India. He argued in this editorial published on the 10th of August 1947 that the Mahatma was wrong in thinking that after independence, the 2 countries would be locked in armed confrontation, because the only quarrel between the 2 was whether or not there should be partition. And now that Pakistan was being constituted as a separate sovereign nation, there would be no further differences between the 2 countries who would happily coexist as neighbors. I quote below the words of Mazhar Ali Khan in this regard from his editorial of the 20th of August. Mazhar Sahib wrote, "The latest and most surprising recruit to the ranks of these prophets of despair is no less a person than Mr. Gandhi. His contention that after the division, the 2 armies will perpetually stand on the borderline in battle array, waiting for the first shot to be fired, is curious indeed. If the 2 states have governments friendly to each other, as we sincerely hope they will, we see no reason at all why a similar friendship should also exist between the 2 armies. Once the 2 states are formed and the 2 armies constituted, the scope for future cooperation is unlimited, given goodwill on both sides. There is too much loose talk flying around these days," concluded Mazhar Ali Khan, "of the dangers confronting Pakistan and Hindustan, both from each other and from foreign aggressors. This is sheer nonsense, and the only thing that can give substance to these imaginary fears is our own stupidity. Whatever differences the people of Pakistan and Hindustan had among themselves have already been settled by the materialization of the division itself." The quotation is to be found at pages 50 to 51 of Mazhar Ali Khan's Pakistan, the First 12 Years, published by Oxford University Press, Karachi, 1996. In the event, both the Mahatma and Mazhar Ali Khan were wrong. Neither could an independent sovereign state, which is what Pakistan was and is, do without its own armed forces. Nor would partition end, as Mazhar Sahib fondly believed, the causes of war between the two countries. Indeed, within months of independence and within Gandhiji's own lifetime, his dire apprehensions of armed conflict came true. And alas, tension, suspicion, fear, animosity, and a history of wars and near wars has been much of the history of the last 64, 65 years. But at the same time, more happily, the two countries have been in dialogue over their differences, especially since the initiation of the Composite Dialogue in 1997, albeit in a disturbingly on and off manner. The gains of the positive period often being negated by the losses of the negative periods that have alternated with better times. And as Aziz Saab said a minute ago, the bad times have tended to be more and longer than the good times. As a result, there would appear to be little actual progress in relations between the two countries. Many on both sides despair that India-Pakistan problems are intractable and argue that therefore, instead of entertaining false hopes of eventual success, it would be better to accept that there are no political solutions. Hence, national attention should be concentrated on shoring up one's defenses against sudden or deliberate attack by the other. I am unwilling to give in to such pessimism and the cynicism it fosters. History may have divided us, but geography binds us, and a shared inheritance holds as much the potential to keep us apart as to bring us together. The choice is for us to make. Hence, in this lecture, I would like to analyze the past and predict the future in the light of four fundamental sets of factors that have divided us for 6 decades, but all of which seem capable of resolution, provided we persist in engaging with each other and not let the dialogue break down. In my view, never before have the prospects been riper for enduring solutions, provided only that we consolidate in written agreements the positive outcomes of the 15-year-old Composite Dialogue, to be signed when, inshallah, Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh visits Islamabad, and simultaneously undertake talks about talks with a view to structuring the next, and I pray final phase of the dialogue as an uninterrupted and uninterruptible process, doggedly pursued without interruption or disruption until relations are fully normalized and both countries are able to look with confidence towards a future of peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation to the joint benefit of both states and to the immense advantage of South Asia. Indeed, the last stage of Indo-Pak reconciliation should be animated by the realization that it is only when India and Pakistan come together, instead of struggling to stay apart, that both countries will come into their own in the international community and enable the South Asian subcontinent to resume its traditional role, played out from the dawn of history till but 2.5 centuries ago, of placing India, Pakistan, and the rest of South Asia in the vanguard of the advancement of human civilization. Remember, we were the world's Sone ki Chiriya. We could again aspire to that position within the course of the 21st century. But first, we have to become friends. And if we don't, then our future will lie in continuing entanglements that bring no peace or prosperity, but only barren conflict and the waste of national and human resources in putting up barriers against one another. Partition arose out of the two-nation theory, the belief that Hindus and Muslims constituted two separate nations who could not live under one roof for fear of the majority community lording it over the minorities. It was always a contested theory, but the germane point is that for the last 6 decades and more, two sovereign independent states have existed. And the issue now is no more coexistence between two communities, but coexistence between two neighboring countries. Now that there are two countries, independent since 6 decades, can our mindsets be eased out of regarding the other as the enemy other, in the direction of recognizing the complementarities in our respective national destinies? For most of the last 6 decades, the best and the brightest of our countries, sons and ulama, ideologues and propagandists, politicians and statesmen, scholars and media, diplomats and the military, as also the worst elements in our society, terrorists and cerebral communalists, have done all they can to render us asunder. They have not entirely succeeded, for we remain hyphenated in the eyes of the world because we remain hyphenated in the minds of our people. And we remain hyphenated because we are hyphenated. We share too much to just turn our backs on each other and hope the other will go away. Siamese twins are not free to roam except with each other, even if they keep pulling away from each other. Reflecting on all that has divided us for 6 decades and more, there are, it seems to me, and as I said a moment ago, 4 sets of factors that stand in the way of reconciliation. I would classify these as follows. 1, generic. 2, institutional. 3, endemic. And 4, episodic. Let me quickly repeat those 4 categories. Generic, institutional, endemic, and episodic. I propose to review each of these with you in the hope that we might discover how to move on from an essentially divisive past towards a more harmonious future. I'll first take up the generic issues of division. Some in India and many in Pakistan would argue that the very reason for partition having been the religious incompatibility between Hindus and Muslims, it is inevitable that the two nations would also find it incompatible to live together as good neighbors. The argument goes that the underlying hostility is generic, built into our genes, as it were, and if it were not, then partition would not have happened. That perhaps is a somewhat fundamentalist way of putting it, and therefore the point is generally made with greater sophistication and nuancing, as not so much a fundamental civilizational incompatibility as a lack of convergence in national interest, or even a belief that hostility being the underlying reality, it is not so much a question of promoting friendship as protecting oneself from hostile intent. Yet, there are, in my view, several levels at which this argument breaks down. First, the Indian Muslim community. Are they not living in harmony with their Hindu brethren? if there were no compatibility, how is it that almost every icon of India's 85% Hindu youth is unabashedly Muslim? The four Khans, superstar Shah Rukh, Amir, Salman and Saif, leading ladies like Katrina Kaif, following Madhubala, Meena Kumari and Nargis of Yo, and Wahida Rahman and Shabana Azmi more recently. The golden voice of Mohammad Rafi and Talat Mahmood, the lyrics of Sahil Ludhianvi and Javed Akhtar, music director A.R. Rahman, who was born Dilip Kumar